Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program, covering motivation on this Monday, Rise and Shine, and give God the glory. And today we're looking at a topic: an increase in knowledge of God and humanity. So, an increase in knowledge of God and humanity, and how does it bless us? This is our process of meditation today. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word in this day. I pray that you may bless us and guide us along as we walk humbly before thee, and may you continue to be our guide in all things for Christ's sake. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic here, which is an increase in knowledge of God and humanity. So an increase in knowledge of God and humanity. And I'm dealing with a new theme for this week. So this week's new theme is the possibilities for good or bad that modernity has brought. So the possibilities for good or bad or good or evil that modernity are brought. And so one of the concepts here that I'll be dealing with is this increase in knowledge of God and humanity. So we'll start with this, and this will set our pace for this week. So very interesting thought that I want to be able to share with you here, and I pray that this will be a blessing to you this week as you journey with me in these thoughts. So I think I have everything squared off here. So our main text will be found in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 through 4, and then verse 8 and 9. So Daniel chapter 10, verse 1 through 4, and then 8 through 10. So in Daniel chapter 12, it reads, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince who standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So, very important thing that I'll deal with in the upcoming theme. But I read it for context because this concept here of it's talking about Michael standing, and then since there was a nation. So I want to talk about nations and how this understanding of nation in the sweep of history, and I'm going to cover some of that today. And how does it bless you? How can that be a blessing to you and yours and your loved ones? So that's what I want to talk to you about. So notice there in verse 2, it says, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So there's these two concepts that are going on. There's the children of the world, Satan, however you want to look at it, and then there's the children of God. And so there's always this battle going on in this world. The minority or the smaller number is always with God's people. And how does this battle go on in this world is kind of what I want to outline here, and how you can be happier in this life and have a better life if you understand certain concepts. So anyhow, I'll continue here. So I'm trying to pull back this string here on the bow. So notice here, and them that sleep in the dust in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and contempt. So the life and the choices one make. In verse 3 now, getting into the main issue here. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But now this concept here of modernity. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So when we talk about modernity, the concept of modernity that I'm going to be exploring with you here this week, the text that comes to my mind, the primary text that comes to mind is Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, right? This is a text that we normally view as a text that tells us that in the end, there will be an increase in knowledge. And there'll be an increase, you can view it as an increase in even travel. And this is important to this concept I'm talking about, the increase of knowledge of God and humanity. The increase of knowledge of God and humanity. This is where I want to go with you this week. So I don't know how much of you ever meditated upon this text, these concepts that are here. And dealt with these things. So I'm going to deal with some of these things. And, if you have any thoughts, you can always share, because these are some interesting times that we're living in. And hopefully, by God's grace, next week, I'm going to deal with what all of this have to do with why Daniel 12 verse 1 kicks off this way. Why does it say these things, and what does it have to do with what I'm going to talk about? So I'm going to lay the foundation this week. So it's a very long process I'm going to go through for the next 2 weeks with you. So notice again now, I'll read it again for you, because this is the text that we normally look at, because this text is talking about the end of time. It's very clear because it comes at the end of Daniel, which would be obvious. Daniel is the prophet that lays out the history of the world as it deals with kingdoms and nations. And ultimately, I'm going to tell you what is it about nations and kingdoms that if you understand God and his movement and the concept of nations or humanity as a mass, you can make yourself be a little bit happier in life. You can relax a little bit more. So notice here, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. So we understand that the book of Daniel was not really understood or open, and the seal was not taken off Daniel until the time of the end. So all of this is there. Many shall run to and fro. We assume there because of the colon that is still attached to the first statement. And I guess those who punctuated the Bible in English, working for King James, decided that there had to be a colon. It's a clause that is connected. So it has to do with the time of the end that people shall run to and fro. And what happened also, it says, and knowledge shall increase. So very important for you to understand this, because this idea here of knowledge increase, and what does that mean for you? And especially what triggered my thought to talk about this is more on health. But we won't go to health yet. We go to health on Wednesday. And so that becomes a very puzzling thing, because when we talk about increase in knowledge, the question that comes to my mind is, what does that mean for my health? And then I started thinking, well, what does that mean for, my mental well-being, my social life, my spiritual life, all that stuff. So notice here, many shall run to and fro. Run to and fro where? How? What do they run to and fro? Is it run to and fro with in the Bible, in history, in on different continents, on different countries? And I believe all of that is there. So this is what I'm talking to you about. Where they're running to and fro. They're going back and forth, to and fro, all over the place. They're running. And they're increasing in knowledge. What's causing that increase in knowledge? All right. So we go to verse 8 now. We're gonna get to that as we go on. So verse 8. Notice in verse 8 it says here, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, what shall be the end of these things? So notice here this constant emphasis that Daniel is saying. Daniel is in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, in the time of Belshazzar. Belshazzar. He's in the time of the Babylonian kingdom, which is Iraq. He's in the time of Iraq, and he's saying, what shall be the end of these things? So if he's saying, oh, sorry, he's at this time he's it would be close to the time of or in the time of Iran. So it's Iraq, Iran, or for our modern reference, Babylon, Medes, and the Persians. So we understand he's in what we call the Middle East, and he's in that time period and that geographical location, and he wants to know what shall be the end of these things, because obviously it's the prophecy is given, the prophecy that is way off in the distance, but he doesn't understand it, and it makes him even sick when he sees the sweep of time that is so far away from him. We're talking about thousands of years away from him. We're thousands of years, 2,000 years plus away from Christ, and Christ is far away from him. So he's seen all these things in vision, and he's looking at it, and he says he's not so much concerned even for his time. He's saying, what shall be the end of these things? So we understand that everything he's saying is the end. So the question for you is, where are we in the travel of time, and where are we in the time prophecy? We believe that we're in the end of times. But, when we look at what happened, when we say the end of time kicks off, is literally we're 100 and something years away from that, and getting close to 200 years away from that. So that's fascinating, right? So when you look at that and you say, okay, Daniel is keep the text keep telling you, even if you just casually read it, that he's saying the end of these things. What shall be the end of these things? What shall be the Michael stands end of these things? Knowledge shall increase at at the end of times. So the question for you and I is: are we that generation that living at the end of times? That's a big question. One of the questions I'm gonna have for you. And if the end of time is where we're living, can you see that there's an increase in knowledge and there's a men running to and fro? And what are they running to and fro with? And what would be the end of these things? And remember, we connect it with kingdoms and nations. All right. So we're throwing some things up there. Stick with me here, hopefully. So notice here, verse 9. And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the end, till till the time of the end. So the end of these things in verse 8, time of the end in verse 9, and in verse 4, to the time of the end. So we see keep getting this thing to the time of the end. So we know that there's a constant emphasis on the time of the end, and we understand, which I'm going to read to you in a few minutes, the sequence of events when it comes on to kingdoms. Now, this is important because when we're talking about end of time or time of the end, in Daniel narrative, we have certain set of kingdoms. Babylon, I'm gonna go over it in a few minutes with you. Babylon, which is Iraq, Medes and the Persians, Iran, Greece, Rome, or we call Italy. Greece is still Greece. And then you have the Western empires of the seven Western empires used to be 10 empires, but they killed three of their brethren, but 10 empires of Western Europe, which are now seven empires. So you know the sequence of event. So if you study Daniel, there is a sequence of event that tells you, give you reference to what he's talking about, right? Because there's a sequence of events, and these empires are still with us, except for probably the Medes. That was the half part, the weaker part of the Persians. And when you look in the news, if you're following the news, it's obvious that you're looking at the news and you see the several Western empires with America, and there's a constant emphasis on the biblical empires. So with seven Western empires, the which is used to be 10, which is used to be headquarters in Italy, and then you have America, you have Israel, you have Iraq, you have Iran. You know, this is like our news. It's almost like when you're looking at the news, you're reading Bible. You know, it's like we're back to Bible times. You have they said the Palestinian and the Jews fighting. In Christ's time, it would be the Jews and the Samaritans, and they don't like each other, and it's never stop. And then you read the Bible narrative, is almost like, you go to the news, you'll be like, am I in the Bible times, or where am I? But that's important to understand, because remember, knowledge shall increase, men shall run to and fro. And when we read Daniel 12 verse 1, it's talking about all those empires. If you read Daniel 11 verse 40, so next week I'll get to that. So I want to stick to my topic here. So very important to understand. So when you read in the Bible, you're reading the news. There can't be no, even if you say it's just a big coincidence, it might be a big coincidence to you. Gog and Magog, kings of the north, kings of the east. It's just straight in the Bible. So we'll deal with that next week. But I want to set that up here. First, we're talking about modernity. What is modernity, and what does it mean to you and I? Living in modernity, and what I believe is the time of the end. So notice here, and he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed, closed up and sealed till the time of the end. So we believe that we can understand what is being explained here. Many shall be purified. Notice this now. This is where you and I come in for motivations, and made white and tried. So a tried, that when something is tried, that means it's tested and it's proven to be rock solid. So many shall be purified and made white and tried, right? But the wicked shall do wicked, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. What does the wise understand? See, it's important to know, because notice here, when we go to Matthew 12, Matthew 25, Christ talks about the There are two sets of virgin. One is wise and one is foolish. So that means the foolish don't understand what's going on. But again, that concept of the wise waiting for the second coming of Christ or in the end of time, that story, because Christ was answering the question, when are you going to come back from the disciples? And Christ gave them the story of the virgins. But the concept was one set of virgins are wise and one set is not wise. So when we come back to here, the word wisdom is put in, right? And it's saying, the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. So what does modernity and this running to and fro and knowledge increase does for you and I that can make us be purified, made white, and tried? And like he says, the righteous shall shine like the brightness of the firmament. That means they're doing great, while other people are doing, terrible. And you can see this. You can go into probably anywhere, country, rural area, city, boondock, and you can see people basically living on the side of the street and living that lifestyle, and they're just going deeper and deeper into drugs, alcohol, debasing life, prostitution, drugs, whatever. This dichotomy. And there's just people just living as if they're just here to eat, sleep, get some material possession, and then die. And then others, by God's grace, like you and I, we have a understanding that there's more to the story, more to life. And we see life, and life is very bright and very vivid for us. And we understand, we're going to talk about some of these things going forward this week, that modernity and the time we're living in is a grand opportunity. And it's an excellent time to witness. As I say, when I watch the news, I see it in a different way. When I hear about Iran, I say, I think I know what they're about, right? And this is part of what I'm going to tell you in a few minutes about motivation. This is exciting times to live in. When I see, like when the pestilence 19 came, that was exciting times for me because I was like, oh, I've been reading about this all my life. I've never lived through a pestilence, but I've read about this study about this in history, Revelation, so forth. And I say, I know where it's going to hit hard. And somebody say, how you know where it's going to hit hard? Because I study about the Dark Ages and where the pestilence were hitting the hardest. And it hit the hardest there. And then there's more hit coming on. So it's vivid and bright. But for other people, it's dark, it's darkness, and it's just bad. And I'm like, well, it's bad, but it's bad in a prophetic way, So it is a bad good thing. So notice that. So you can live life and you can see life, and it can be vivid and bright because you're not just here to eat and sleep and poop and just have material possession. You see life in a different way, and you look at life totally different. So when I hear Iraq, and I remember when I said this before, and I say it to you now, and then I move on to my next text. I remember when I was younger, and I was home one day, and I was watching the war in Iraq about to kick off, what they call the shock and awe, or whatever they call it. I think it was shock and awe under General Powell and Schwarzkopf, and I can't remember whoever they were. Anyhow, so I remember looking at that war. And I'm looking at the war and I'm saying, wait a minute. They're gonna attack Iraq from multiple places, and I say, okay, America's gonna attack Iraq from multiple places, from sea, land, all kind of stuff. But they had troops stationed in Turkey, and the troops were supposed to come from Turkey and deploy from Turkey a certain place. So I say, I'm curious because if I remember right, Turkey is the Ottoman Empire. So I say, are the Ottomans, which are still, they're more whitish, so to speak, but they're, they even claim to be part of European Union, but they're really more Arab and so forth. So I say, I wonder if the head of the Ottoman Empire, which is Turkey, which is significant in Bible history if you study Revelation, are they going to allow America to deploy and attack Iraq? And this is important when we deal with Israel because Turkey, you remember, quickly, the American foreign leader called certain countries the moment Iran started to hit Iran, which is the Medes and the Persians, which are really Persians. So these things are important to me because I'm saying, okay, so I remember I say, So for me, everybody was probably looking at the war. I was focused on one thing: what is Turkey going to do? Because Turkey is supposed to be part of the EU, but they're really supposed to be part of the Ottoman. They used to be the Ottoman Empire. And I remember at the end, it was so exciting for me because I was like calling to say, I don't think they're gonna go through with it. I think this doesn't fit my understanding of Bible narrative. And I remember right at the end, Turkey like pulled the plug in America and said, "No, we're not going to allow you to deploy." And I'm like, I was so excited. You're young, young and excited. And I was like, yeah. I said, I called it. I was like, I think I understand what's going on. See, so for me, it's a vivid experience because I'm like, I think I'm seeing the players because the players are still on the playing field. That's what the Bible tells us. And I'll go over that, especially next week. That the players are still on the playing field. Players never left the playing field. And that's what the Bible actually predicted. That none of the players you see in the Old Testament left the playing field. They're still on the playing field. They're just degraded. They've lost their power. But they're still there. And they're still, and we all interacting with them from a global level. But we're still on motivation. So let's get back now. So I read it again. Many shall be purified and made white. That's where we're supposed to come in and be tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. They don't really understand what's going on. They don't understand what modernity is. See, modernity, and I'll deal with this on Wednesday. Modernity is that there's a microscope and a telescope, and we can use the microscope and peer into the atom, and we can see there, and we can understand what the teeth, Teeth, I think it is teeth, is made up of, and we can understand how to do dental care. We understand. We understand the gum. There's something we understand, but what does that change? What does that offer to me? How do I deal with my body when it comes on to it? Do I do drugs? Do I do herbs? Because now I finally understand what's in the plant and the leaf. Do I understand what food is? What nutrients is? But does that mean I go chemical? You see, we have to deal with that. So that's what we're going to deal with this week. Because we want to lay a foundation, just this concept here, that many shall be purified and made white. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. What they don't understand. But they in modernity, we're living amongst them. We're them, so to speak. But what is the difference between us and them? Very important. And if you understand this, you can live a vivid, bright life. If you don't, you live a life of wicked that just don't understand what's going on. You don't get the narratives. So when we see, well, I'll deal with it in a few minutes. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, as we continue with this topic, an increase in knowledge of God and humanity. So notice here in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, remember these texts never went anywhere. These texts are still there. Unlike the people in other churches, we don't believe that the Old Testament was nailed to the cross. We believe that the sacrificial system came to an end. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 through 17 says, and the law was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So that's even a different way to say it. In Genesis 2, verse 15, it says, and the Lord God took the man and put him into the garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. So when we're created and put in a garden, and we're created to dress. Dress means that you add to it. Keep means you keep it where it's at, and then you make it better. So this is still our task. Nothing has changed. Even if you live in a desert, you're called to dress and keep it. You make it better, and you dress it up. In our homes, in everything we do, this is the principle of life. This principle was, Christ didn't nail this to the cross. See, the wicked don't understand. Even the wicked that go to church, it seems like they're confused. Everything we do in this life, we try to make it better. And what modernity has done is given us a better opportunity, even while after thousands of years of sin, that we can make life better. So when I talk about motivation, what it is that you want to live the best life, you want to live the happiest life, you want to live this life that is described in the Bible. But notice here it continues. It says, and the Lord God commanded the man, and saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayst eat, thou mayst freely eat. Every tree, all right, thou mayst freely eat. Very important. I'm emphasizing every tree. You must freely eat. You can eat. You can do whatever you want to do. Eat the trees from the trees of the garden. But notice here, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So the question I ask for you today, is this text still stand? My answer for it is still. Somebody said, but Lord, there's no tree in the garden. We're not even in a garden. But should everything you partake of, philosophically, physically, food wise, whatever, is everything you need to partake of? Because there's things that are evil that you should not partake of. And this did not change because there's no tree. And especially when we deal with modernity, one has to be very careful of what you partake of. Because there's things like forever chemicals, they don't never go away. There's a lot of poison in our system. There's a lot of poison in our world, in our society, in our countries we live in. And one has to be careful. There's things in nature that are poisonous that should not be partake of. So this text never changed. Somebody say, "Oh, when Christ died, he lifted all the curse." Have you read any history of what happened after Christ's death in the Dark Ages? The curses, even some of them, it seemed like they got worse. And we are told that in the end, there'll be a time of trouble that Michael will trigger. So I don't understand what they're talking about. So there must be something else going on here. So again, I'm going to read it for you. And when you think about this, in this life, you have to be discerning and you have to understand that there's things that you can partake of and there's things that you should not partake of. And if you don't get that, you will be one of the wicked that don't understand. And remember, when we talk about it, it says, many shall be purified and made white and tried. What is tried? Tried is that the thing is tested and it's proven to pass the test or to fail the test. But when you're purified and made white, so there are things we have to purify out of our lives. Modernity doesn't mean that says every garbage that they come out with, out of the chemical industry that you partake, you shoot it in your hand or you put up your nose or whatever. Not everything in nature you need to partake. Not everything in life that might be good for one use, but it might not be good for your use. It might be good for one use, but another use could be dangerous. And you've seen that in everything you do in life. Something might be great in one environment, but terrible in another environment. And that's life. You have to be discerning, if you know what I'm saying. There's things that we deal with that can be very dangerous chemicals, but you don't eat it. You probably use it to disinfect and clean stuff and to strip stuff off, get stuff off something, but you don't partake of them. And when you partake of them, you use gloves, use a face mask and stuff like that, because that's what modernity has bring us. And if you don't understand that, then, we didn't even start the week yet, but we have things to talk about. So we have to get that because the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is still is a philosophy and a concept that one still have to be aware of. And what I've noticed is that people will say we live in modern times, and I'm looking at them and saying, not every garbage that they put out on TV, on the media, you need to partake of. So not call it TV anymore because now it's multimedia. Not everything that a manufacturer put out, you need to partake of or touch. There might be something that, it might be used in the industrial process, but it doesn't mean that you need to touch you, because if you touch you could die. That's just a fact. So there's people who talk about, oh, we live in modern time. What does it mean modern time? Modern times, to me, a lot of what modern times is you have a great opportunity to be blessed. You have a great opportunity to be cursed. You can get things done faster, easier, more access, but also that can be applied to something that's bad. You can live stream some of the craziest things that's happening in the world. You can live stream something all the way from the other side of the world. So knowledge has increased, but so is knowledge of good and evil. Does that make sense? So one has to be discerning in these last times for you to survive. One has to understand modernity mean, as I say, everything you must partake of, everything you must push in your mouth. You must read ingredients list. You must understand what's in those ingredients, what those words that are very hard to understand that you have to sometimes search to find out what is that product. And sometimes it's just something that is whatever, because we compare it to the atom, we can separate out things. And some of the things we separate out are very dangerous. Some of the things are very good. So we can understand nutrients and so forth. So we'll deal more on that later. So I'll read it again for you. Genesis chapter 2, verse 17. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So this was always there. And this is definitely there in our lives. It's there right now in a heavy way. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Man, some wickedness you can learn about. Some things you can see, some horror shows you can see on media, various different multimedia that you access. And it's right at the fingertip. Just like with Adam and Eve, it was easy for them to partake of the tree. So it is with just about every evil in this life. And if you want to live a happy life, you have to become very discerning and understand not every media you can partake of. Not every philosophy is great. Not everything to eat is good. Not everything you interact with. As I say, there's things that look, there's times I feel some pain in different joints or different muscle. But when I'm creaking, so to speak, and my system is not working, I wouldn't take WD-40, which is a lubricant or something that they use to make metal and stuff like that move more easily. I wouldn't take it and spray it on myself. It's just not for that. It's for metal. So when I, when this is simple, I know, but I'm just saying, because I'm using that because somebody I heard tried it and it didn't work. But did it work? I don't think it worked. But somebody later tried that thing on the knee. Because when you're in pain, you can grab for the WD-40. You probably gonna need some grease for joints, for not for joints, for joints for cars, and you just spray it. And so, even though it might sound simple, but people can be very simple in this life because we're in modern times now, and then people get ridiculous. And there's a lot of things I've heard people do to even not serve the Lord because they get so caught up into modernity, and it's like a god, and they don't understand. Not everything somebody look into a microscope and decide to duplicate and say, "Here you go, here's some medicine. You need to take it and put it in your mouth." Not good. It is, you have to be discerning. So I read it again because if you want to live this life and survive, not every philosophy, not every movie, not every music that you need to listen to, because some of these things they get stuck in your head, and as it gets stuck in you get a lot of garbage in your head, garbage in and garbage out. So notice here, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt eat of it, for in the day that thou eat, that's hard. I read that wrong. Thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So there's a lot of people, as I say, crack cocaine, fentanyl, xylazine, you know, trank, all these different things. You see people eat it, and some of them just peg out right away. It was the first time, boom, dead. Other people they go on fentanyl, Adderall, all this type of stuff, and they live for a while. And then some of them end up becoming vagabonds and just worthless on the side of the street. And they didn't die; they just become worthless. And so there's things that you should not partake of. But somebody said, but we in modern time, yeah, and there's a lot of modern madness that we have going on. But there's a lot of good things that we have going on. And those you should partake of. You just have to be discerning to understand. So this is what my process of meditation going to be this week. In Acts chapter 24, verse 28, Acts chapter 24, verse 28. Acts chapter 24, verse 28. Very important thought here that I want to share with you in Acts chapter 24, verse 28. Notice in Acts chapter 24, verse 28, it says, and God made the world. So God made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. So this is a different discussion Paul is dealing with, but I'm coming here for a certain reason. So I wanted to first start off by saying in Acts here that Paul is basically expressing to the people that God made the world, and notice he made the world and all things therein. And so when we go to back to going back there, but when we go back to Genesis, chapter 2, and we see that God made the world and everything therein. We come away with this idea here that God made the world and everything that therein, right? And so this idea here that says we have to originally see that when God made the world, he made the world a certain way, not only with the good and evil, but with the people and so forth. Because that's where we're going. Kind of switching here. And this is my switch text. So notice here, neither is worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and had made of one blood Adam, and then ultimately again Noah, all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and not determine the times of their the times before appointed, and the bounds of their habitation. So I'm gonna pause there. So when we talk about kingdoms, and we talk about God's creation and what God have done to all men, and knowledge shall increase, and men shall run to and fro, that type of thing. Notice here, Paul makes this statement that we all have one blood, no matter what they have taught us, that people evolve and, all this type of foolishness. But we all one blood. And but God from that one blood has made all nations. God is a lover of variety. So if you study plants, animals, birds, blah, blah, you can see that God is a lover of variety. So God has made all nation. Depends on what time of the year they, and whatever war fought and who won and who lost. There's about 180 something countries on the planet. That's what they say. And God has made all nations. There's more habitations and stuff here. Like you go to United Kingdom and you start realizing it's not England, it's basically a few countries. Britain is the primary country. So he had made of one blood all nations. So that's we follow. White, red, yellow, black, black and white and all that. And men for to dwell on all the face of the earth. So God says, listen, I put these people here, that people here, this people here. This is the narrative of the Bible. This is what God has done. And determine their times, plural, their times. Right? So no prophecy there, just understanding that there are times. In other words, there's one nation come up and they have its time and then it goes down. Then another nation comes up, he has its time, its zenith, its apex, its power, and then it goes down. But he's still there. And before appointed, the Lord said it was before appointed. So is this true? Can we really say that there's an appointed time for nation when it's this time for this nation to rise and this time for this nation to rise and this time for the nation to go down? Well, Paul said, yes, it's so. So talking about now when I say there's narratives in the Bible that one must understand to be happy. As I say, you have to understand that there's good and evil. There's things to partake of and not to partake of. So now when I apply that to nations, each nation brings something to the table, so to speak. And I partake of it and I do it like I just say watermelon. You eat the watermelon, but you spit out the seed, right? And sometimes I chew the seed because people say there's nutrients in the seed because in the seed is, that's a different story. So in all nations, God has appointed their bounds and their habitation. God appointed. No, men might say, no, we're going to change things and so forth, which they can. They can affect things, I think. But God has appointed. So when you understand this concept again, I'm learning this concept. We're in the time of the end. There's these nations, they have their bounds, their habitations, they're good and evil. If you want to be happy, there's things that you can take, just like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All nations, they come with something to the table. I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And when you see you live life like this, you don't have to live life where you don't understand. No, listen, every nation has its value and they have some things that they have negative. You take off the value and you bless yourself because you understand life. And you reject what is good and not of value, and then you move on. Knowledge shall increase and you can run to and fro. The Bible teaches that not everything you have to partake of, in other words. Just get my point here. In every dealing you deal in life, whatever you deal in life, and I'll go through this in a week, not everything you have to eat and swallow. Not everything is good. It might be look good, but it's not good for you for food. And when you do life like this, life is more rich. When you understand that says, God put the Chinese where the Chinese are at. God put the Filipino where the Filipino is at. God put Indonesia where Indonesia is at. God put Malaysia where Malaysia is at. And there's something about them as a character, about their culture, their food, their ideology, their behavior, their geographic location, their landscape, all of that. It's God that did that. And you respect that. And you just go through life and you say, you know what, Pen, I want to learn from these people, learn from that people, and have a rich experience. Other people, they're fighting against that and they're depressed. We don't want to be like that. We want to be like, listen, I want to partake of different people's food. I want to partake of different people's culture and so forth. I just want to live a free, happy life because I can't, I didn't choose to live in this life per se. God chose that we live in this life and this is how life is constructed. And different people have different things. And there's people who have a headache because somebody is different from them. For me, I just say there's going to be negative difference and there's going to be positive difference. From the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you just partake of some things and then other things you don't partake. For the tree, being this life, you have to choose. In other words, you were told, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eat from the tree of life. So when we deal with other people, life. It's the same thing when we talk about health. Because of modernity, we have some opportunities to partake of things that's going to give us life. And we partake of those things. We use the Bible, we use history, we use science, we use knowledge, understanding, wisdom to figure out what to partake of or what not to partake of. That's it. So when we do this, life is better. I'll read it again. The Lord has determined their times before appointed and their bounds of their habitation. So when we say Iraq, God has determined that those people, not me, their culture is different, everything you learn. And so I like to watch even videos or go different places and interact with people. But I just realized I need to eat of the tree of the I'm saying the tree of the knowledge of good. I need to eat the tree of life, not the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I'm just want to partake of whatever good they have to offer, and then the rest of the nonsense, I leave it alone. Same thing while I'm here in the United States. There's a culture here and stuff like that. I just try to partake of what's good in the culture. The rest of it, I leave alone. You have to be discerning in this life, as you get poisoned. Notice here that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. So Paul is saying, listen, because it was, I think this was the thing that was made to the unknown God or something. So Paul is saying here that says all of this is intention of God. People get confused, with why this nation does this a certain way and why this nation does this a certain way. No, you don't get confused with it. You look at various different nations and they have, as I say, all of them have something good and bad. And when they have nothing good to share, then God will just wipe them out. It's God's business, none of my business to do that. So what it is that some nation has something good to share, history, something rich tapestry, and there's some bad. We just don't partake of the bad. If they're doing some devil worship and stuff like that, we don't partake of that, because that's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We partake of what is good, and we leave the rest of it alone. So verse 28 says, "For in him we live and move and have our being, as a certain of our own poets have said, for we also are his offspring." And this is true. Ultimately, we're created from the blood of Christ spiritually, but we all come from God because God created Adam. And so he is our Father, which literally is in heaven. So now to Daniel chapter 2. So we go back to Daniel now. So in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel sets up some things that I think one must understand. Very well, no, this is must understand if you want to understand life. Remember, part of our motivation is that we don't go through life like chickens or like fish. With fish, they just swim. They just operate by instinct. Salmon is a good example of that. They just do things by instinct. We understand life because we have intelligence and we can try to figure out what's going on. And God gives us these knowledge and wisdom so we understand this concept of these bounds and habitation. And then when we interact with others as being part of the mass of humanity, all from Adam, all from Noah. And we just interact with everybody as quote unquote our brothers and sisters. And then we just try to take the good that they have to offer. That means the tree of life that they have to offer, because every nation come with something. We don't fight against people. We're not trying to be, racist, in the proper meaning of the word. We just try to deal with everybody as the mass of humanity that hopefully they will be able to find God like we're trying to do. So notice in Daniel chapter 2, and we're looking at Daniel 2 verse 29. So it says, "As for thee, O king, thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, when thou come to pass after, what should come to pass thereafter. And he that revealeth secret make it known to thee, what shall come to pass." So notice here, this is the great famous Daniel chapter 2, the study of many people are trying to understand what next. So Nebuchadnezzar himself, what we classified, the Bible classified, not we, but the Bible classified as the Golden Empire and the Golden King, the king that is referred to as the King of Kings, so to speak. Only the king that made gold become of nothing was Solomon. And as we know, the scepter passed from Egypt to Solomon, David and Solomon to Israel, and then from Israel to Babylon, and then from Babylon to the Iranian beings of the Persians, and then Greece and Rome and so forth. All right. So notice here now, this is a famous, as I say, dialogue two that outline the history of the world. Remember, Paul says God has stated before their times and their habitation. It's laid out. God says, at this time, this kingdom has come to power. At this time, that kingdom will come to power, and so forth and so on. God laid it out. It can't be changed, and it never changed. And history showed us. So when you live in life, it's really motivating when you see certain things happen, and you say, this is going to happen this way. And somebody say, why would you call it like that? Because I say, my study of prophecy. Like, where are you getting that from? Right there in Daniel, right there in Revelation, right there in Acts. God laid it out. This nation going to rise, this nation going to fall, blah, 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 blah. So Nebuchadnezzar now thinking about it, and he's going to have some problem with depression. We know the story about that later on. I'm not dealing with that today, Ken. And he's dealing with this concept here. What next? And we're too dealing with the concept because when we see all the nations that, especially the prominent nations in the Bible, what we're going to read right now, are fighting. All the Bible, the major powers that are written in the Bible, fighting. We have to know, we have to ask ourselves, are we in the time of the end? And then we have to say, am I living life in a vivid, colorful dream like Nebuchadnezzar? Or is it just a big coincidence? And I believe we're in a vivid dream. Notice here, but as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living. That's very important. But for their sakes, that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know that the thoughts of that may know the thoughts of thy heart. So the king was revealed, the dream was revealed to the king because the king was thinking certain things. And as he's thinking certain things, he's thinking, who's next? What's next? Is what's gonna happen to my kingdom? Who's gonna be the next kingdom? Because remember, he's the best. And that's what the Bible testified, that he's the golden kingdom. Ain't no king like him. And every king after him has been inferior. That's very important for you to know. We're not living, I'll deal with that in a second. So notice here, thou, O king, sawest and beholdest a great image, this great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, his breast and arm was of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, and his legs iron, and his feet part iron and part clay. So we know we're living in the empire of the time period of the clay and iron. Thou sawest still the stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them in pieces. Then was the iron and the clay and the brass and the silver and the gold broken in pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Massive time prophecy there, and we're living in the end part of that. Now, notice here, this is one of the texts that tells me, indicates to me that the empires that are that are in the Bible that we just read about, because this is an empire, I'll explain a little bit. It's not a basic Bible study, I have a few minutes. But the empires that are there will continue until the end. You catch that, right? So that's important. So when we look at the news, somebody say, okay, but you're saying this is the stretch of world empires. Yeah, you have the Iron Monarchy. Even in modern history, they refer to the Iron Age, Stone Age, this type of age. They always refer to things as age, the age of things, the time and the habitations. But the Bible referred to the Babylon as Golden Kingdom, Silver, Medes and the Persians, the Greece, and then you have Rome, Iron Monarchy. And then you have the clay. To me, if I hear clay empire, iron and clay, I always just think of New York City. That's it. Part of it, they call it the brick city. And then these massive towers that goes up into the heavens, or to the skyscrapers, they call it, 20 feet or more. They call them basically they're metal structures, metal and clay structures. We still to this day, our structure, we have sheetrock. Sheetrock is basically paper and stone. We have tile, blah blah. So you get the story. So when you look at the environment, it says gold was like so. But here's the thing that's important why I came here, talking about having a vivid, exciting life. When I look at the image for me, a unique aspect that I teach that I've probably never heard anybody teach is that when you look at the image goes from very expensive metal, and the kingdoms go from a very expensive metal to metals that are less expensive and material that are less expensive but more useful. So when I think about life, what modernity is to me, because that's ultimately what I'm dealing with this week. What modernity is to me, living in modernity and looking back at history, we have very useful things and materials to deal with and things that we use materials with that can be very useful and bless us. But the value of them might not be as valuable. In other words, you look at an ounce of gold is 2,000 something dollars. But you can't do much with it. It has stuff because it doesn't corrode. But you wouldn't run it like the copper empire, you wouldn't run it for electrical. Copper is a good conductive, iron is a good conductive, but it's cheaper, right? So when you look at the image, you go from old times to modern time. What modernity is to me, because I'm answering a bigger question, multiple questions here, is that modernity is to me is that what we touch and deal with, good or bad, they're very functional. In other words, you get up in a tin can, so to speak, which you call an airplane. It's just a metal, and it's not an expensive metal, aluminum and stuff like that, iron. And you can fly from one place to the other within minutes, hours. Very useful. There, I guess you could have a chariot of gold, but what's the use of that? You could have a tank. A tank is a better functioning thing than a chariot of gold. Chariot of gold is have no use. You could shoot a bow and arrow through that thing. I am assuming, but you could have a metal can that you couldn't even put. It's hard to pierce it with a bomb. In other words, you go from more valuable but not useful to in modern times, almost like as we get weaker, the instruments that we use are more useful. It's almost like a makeup for the weakness of humanity. That to me is part of what the Lord is doing. Very interesting. So when you see the kingdoms, you see the kingdom rise and kingdom fall, the kingdoms themselves, to me, they go from very a lot of like what is Nebuchadnezzar known for? He's known for the hanging gardens. Historically, they say it was one of the most beautiful hanging gardens. No, you've been to a garden; it's beautiful, but it doesn't function. I'll take a blender literally over a garden. It has more use. A car has more use. It's beautiful and it might look like, oh, this is so golden, but it's just a lot of embellishment. You look at Egypt, you look at the pyramids, you'd be like, unless it's for grain silo and stuff like that, what is it for? But it's excellent to look at. It's something to muse at. But the value that we have today are values that can bless our lives immensely. So, just concepts like those that I look at it and say, it's vivid. Now, let's close off here with a little bit more reading here, and let me try to tie this up so I can set myself up for tomorrow. So notice here, and it said the image that thou saw is a stone cut out without hand. Then was the iron and the clay. Okay, so the iron and the clay. So notice it says in verse 35, this is where I get the idea that all the kingdoms are still on the planet at the time of the end. Because notice it says the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold. So Babylon is still here. Medes and Persians still here. The brass kingdom, which is the Grecians, are still here. Brass, you don't do much with that. I guess run wire. And the clay is still here. Roman Empire. We're under the Roman Empire divided, and then they chop off three of the toes, and now you have 7 Western empires. We're under that empire. This is the empire that gave us, slavery, Jim Crow, all of that type of stuff. America is a child. Argentina, which is German, and Spanish is a child of the 7 Western empire. All the Western world are 7 Western empires. So this is the environment that we live in. So if you notice here, the image that comes down, which is a stone that is cut out with our hand, and it hits the image on the feet represents the kingdom that we're living under, which is Western Europe, including America and the 7 Western tribes or kingdoms of Europe. It hits that image, but when it hits the image, it takes out Greece, it takes out Italy, it takes out Iraq, it takes out Iran. It takes out the Medes and the Persian, Babylon, the Grecian, the Italian, and ultimately the seven Western tribe, all these different machination, and then America. It takes us all of them, so they're all existent. You see what my point here? They're all in existence. So if you look at the news yesterday and the day before, what are you seeing? You're seeing the same thing. You see Britain, Germany, I think it was Germany, Jordan, which is tied to Western Europe, is British, really. Israel, America, trying to fight against bombs coming from, or shoot down bombs coming from Iran. What is Iran? The Persians, Second Empire, the Medes and the Persians. What is the Medes and the Persians? Now, what is these kingdoms, real quickly? When you understand why we get something from all these kingdoms, we live in each of these kingdoms. That's the other thing also. Somebody say, well, we're in Western Europe. No, we're not. We're in a composite of all these kingdoms. So I'll give you. When we talk about Babylon, Babylon gave us this retinue of necromancers and wizards and astrologers. Today we call them astronomy, medicine, yada, 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 yada. But that came from, so all these kingdoms take from each kingdom. Egyptian, we talk about medicine, we're talking about Egyptian witchcraft or whatever craft they have. And we come over to that. And then Babylon, and then Israel corrupted because Solomon and the women, the daughter of Pharaoh and stuff like that. They took over some of that. Then when Israel fall apart, then they took the Israeli and some of the Egyptian concepts and they take it to Babylon. You can read the story of Daniel. And then when that fall apart, and they keep going on and on. They keep taking from each other, build up their kingdom. So when we talk about laws of the Medes and the Persians, which are Iranian, the Iranian gives us laws. Not laws that are just a court. You see, we don't have a Roman court system. We have an Iranian court system. Or a modern technology, as I say, I'm speaking to you from technology that comes from Iran. Because Iran gave us Pythagoras theorem, algebra, trigonometry, no, I don't think trigonometry, but whichever the major mathematical formulas that we use to run the internet. All this come from Iran because the laws in the Medes and Persian, not just the legal system, but laws. A lot of laws come from them. So again, when yesterday you saw that bombing, that was a display of the Iranian technology. Because if you look at the war in in Ukraine, most of the drones are coming from Iran. Because Iran is probably the biggest country or the top when it comes on to drone technology. But somebody would be shocked and say, Lord, why? Because when you understand, God put them there and God give them their bounds and ambit, they give them their special sauce, so to speak. And their special sauce is on display. And if you don't get that, you're not living a vivid dream. You're not understanding prophecy. You don't understand what's going on. Why would the Iranian be at the head of drone? God, them guys, them into that type of technology. They've been like that. That they gave us most of what we deal with. And so you can't underestimate them because somebody told you on the media, you should. Don't underestimate what they can do. That's why Russia goes to them and say, give us your drone technology. And they've been, as I say, whipping butts and taking names over there in Ukraine. But it's Western Europe they're fighting against. If you understand these wars, you understand. We're still in Bible times and narratives. So much more here I could deal with. So each of these kingdoms, like the Grecians give us philosophy. They're very philosophical. Every nation have their own philosophies and all kind of liberal arts and all this madness and so forth. So when you go to each nation, what you're doing is you're understanding not only life in the vivid way the Bible outlines it, and this is the life that we're living, but you also understand that we have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We have tree of life. Each nation, you just take what's good you can get from them. Don't partake of the evil because each of them brought some mess to the table. Same thing when you live in America, Europe, wherever you live in, Iran, China, whatever. China of the Silk Road, where what they say, what does the Chinese come and say today? Oh, we're going to build the Belt and Road Initiative. It's the same thing. They've been doing it for thousands of years, way before even Christ probably walked the face of the earth. They've been like that. They build stuff. They build the Great Wall of China and so forth. Each nation brings something to the table. When you understand that, then you just work with life and understand. You avoid the bad, the evil, the good and evil. You take the good. And if you can do like that, you can be that discerning. Well, there it is. So again, modful there. I'm going to flesh this out as I go through the week with you. So I'm going to show you how to live life more vivid and have a more colorful life and a more brilliant life where you understand life, what it is, and you're not living like a chicken or a fish where you don't know what's going on in the news and stuff like that. We're going to try to hold it down here this week with you. May you be blessed. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for your love towards us and the constant blessings that you show to us and bestow your grace upon us by showing us your word and make us understand not only the sweep of history, but currently what's going on in this life. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow, where we should talk about finance. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.